everybody. Welcome back to the Popcorn Square. Today, we are going to be talking about the ghost with the most. We're going to be talking about Beetlejuice. The juice is loose, everybody. So, what we're going to go over is kind of like, the original Beetlejuice, and what we're kind of looking forward to is seeing with this Beetlejuice, which of course would be the second.
You said it 3 times.
Well, I know, right? It's okay. I don't have any
It's
like little
showtime.
dioramas over here, right? With Beetlejuice, it's one of my childhood favorites for me. It came out the year I was born, y'all, in March, which again, I was born in March. So it's got a little bit of a tie for me. But I've always enjoyed Tim Burton's stuff and his movies in that. And Beetlejuice is definitely one of those ones that I always enjoyed. Again, it's a very, lighthearted but dark but very kind of twisted world he's created here with this movie. Just a bunch of quirky, fun characters as well. Beetlejuice he's just fun. And you got Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice. So he's very much this lovable, goofy kind of character in the movie, and just kind of one of those kind of almost like, yeah, love to hate him kind of guy. He's definitely rough around the edges.
Not quite an anti-hero.
Yeah, not quite an anti-hero, but he's definitely, he's got his own style. And Michael Keaton is just perfect as Beetlejuice. He brings that character to life. Nobody else could be Beetlejuice but Michael Keaton.
He's like Beetlejuice is Michael Keaton is Beetlejuice as Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool.
Right. So we're just going to go ahead and launch right into talking about Beetlejuice. Again, this is Buttons, and I'm here with my co-host,
Neff.
Kage.
All right, so we're going to jump right into it. Now, first thing I'm going to talk about Beetlejuice, just to kind of get us into the number mindset of this, is because we don't have anything for Beetlejuice as far as, what the production budget was on it. But the original film, $15 million budget, and it made $74.7 million. So not a huge win, but back in the day, that is still some solid return on this movie, and it's definitely one of those cult classic movies, in my opinion, that people will go back and talk to. Just as we talked about in our previous episode with the success of Ghostbusters, with Beetlejuice, we also had that launch of an animated series as well. I think that was very common, but of course this would have been in, the 90s that animated show came out. So again, very similar formula, I think, with Ghostbusters. And if any of you guys grew up in the 90s, you'll notice that there was a very strong animated presence as far as these kind of creepier shows. Ghostbusters, Beetlejuice, Real Monsters. I mean, you've got a lot of that. I mean, even with like some of the Ren and Stimpy stuff, like the little skits in that they had, these kind of like devil characters in there as well. So there's definitely a strong horror theme, Are You Afraid of the Dark? That kind of stuff going into what was a large part of my childhood in the 90s anyway. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Kage. Go ahead and tell me about your love of the, or hate of the original Beetlejuice film.
So for me, Beetlejuice is really, really big to me. I was 5, when Beetlejuice came out. And like I mentioned in a previous episode, just like Ghostbusters, I had a lot of toys for Beetlejuice. I absolutely loved the movie. In fact, Beetlejuice was my very first Tim Burton movie. It came out just before Batman, actually. So looking it up online here, Tim Burton is really famous in Hollywood for a lot of people in our generation here at the Popcorn Square, as well as many Americans in general. But Beetlejuice came out in '88. And Batman came out in 89. So needless to say, Tim Burton was on a tear in the beginning. And fun fact, he did Pee-wee's Big Adventure. A lot of people don't know that.
His very lighthearted take.
Well, that was the
compared to
only,
darker
that was like
movies.
I think one of the few lighthearted things he did. He's known for being dark and macabre. So Pee-wee's Big Adventure is not something, it's
Kind of a departure from that.
kinda. But yeah, and also, when Beetlejuice and Batman came out, Tim Burton is attached to both of those. So is the actor Michael Keaton. So
Yeah.
that kind of really helped his career. And he got called back for future Batman films. But in terms of Beetlejuice, though, Beetlejuice was just awesome. It was just a good time. It kind of gave, just like Ghostbusters, it kind of gave light to death and
Yes,
macabre
yes.
and all that stuff. You think about Nightmare Before Christmas. They talk about, death is like all gloomy. And what's funny is when I think it's a staple in Tim Burton films where they show the real world as dark, gloomy, and they show the dead characters, the ghosts are so full of life, and there's comedic aspect, and it kind of makes you think death isn't so scary. You're just kind of kicking it, you know. But in terms of Beetlejuice, the character, he's just pure mischief. He's just pure mischief. So it's just a really good time.
Yeah. You bring up some good points, as far as Tim Burton going ahead and taking some of these characters. We've noticed him reuse his cast, for certain movies and certain roles. Obviously, we know Tim Burton also worked a lot with Johnny Depp as well. He's been in several of his movies, but he does have this attachment with Michael Keaton too. And of course, with Beetlejuice 2, or Beetlejuice, however you want to call it, that one, again, we're seeing that reprisal with Michael Keaton, and it's still going to be Tim Burton directing. Neff, do you have a lot of experience with Beetlejuice?
Well, not so much Beetlejuice, but like Kage was saying, he made a lot of great points there. We have always talked about this. Nightmare Before Christmas, probably my favorite movie ever. Batman 1989, also Batman Returns. I know you love that as
Yeah.
well. That one is your favorite from the Michael Keaton
is
era,
my Batman.
right? But yeah, and the same as like the Ghostbusters stuff. Beetlejuice, Tim Burton's work. It's one of those things that's intergenerational, right? It's good work. It has stuck around for 20 to 30 plus years. It's still relevant, and I still think people will have I guess an appreciation for the work, and I think this movie will do pretty well. As far as Beetlejuice, the second Beetlejuice, right? I don't know if I'm going to see it in theater, but like I said, I do think people will come out to watch that film. I do think it will do well, and like I said, it's going to be kind of like Ghostbusters. Now, in performance, I guess in the performance aspect, it could possibly do better than what you saw with Frozen Empire as far as a direct comparison. But when I talk about people going out to watch those films, I'm comparing them based off the nostalgic aspect and people being familiar with the
100%.
product. So that's how I feel about Beetlejuice, to move on. But what you got next for us, Button? Do you want to talk about that trailer?
Yeah. So let's dive into now. It took a while for them to actually release an initial trailer, and the teaser trailer that they have in there, the best thing about it is you see those characters that are returning. You're seeing, Michael Keaton coming back. You're seeing Catherine O'Hara coming back. You're seeing Winona Ryder coming back. So, the original movie, those characters you're not really seeing return are like Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin. And then, of course, you have some of the other ones, which some of these actors have actually already passed. That's why they can't come back. But, or they just kind of faded into obscurity. They don't really have, any more involvement in Hollywood. But the big main characters that, you want to see coming back to this is going to launch what the story is going to be about with this trailer. You don't they haven't really given a lot away yet. You see Lydia's character, who was Winona Ryder. She has a daughter now, that's Jenny Ortega. I feel like Jenny Ortega is a very good choice as far as the same type of look that Lydia had. Winona Ryder. And again, Winona Ryder, another character Tim Burton has used in multiple movies. She was Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice.
That's right.
So, I mean, again, we're seeing that return of, Tim Burton's, use of the same actors that he enjoys working with, or that will enjoy working with him on those projects. And, one of the greatest things that I saw, and I think it was, I think it might have been Kage who sent me the information that was talking about an article that was talking about how Michael Keaton, launched himself back onto this film because he knew that Tim Burton was going to do it right. Like, he was not going to throw a ton of visual CGI, special effects in there, because the original one was very practical. It did have a little bit of special effects, don't get me wrong. You can't have this movie without some, but, this original Beetlejuice won, I believe it was an Academy Award or maybe a Golden Globe, one of those things, for the makeup. And it really shows to those practical effects, because if you've seen the original film, you're going to see that those character development and that with the costumes and the makeup really sell and really get you involved in that. I mean, that guy sitting in the waiting room with a shrunken head, like the character who's, the magician's assistant who's been cut in half. And so she's sitting there with a torso and her legs, on the other side of the couch there. I mean, and then of course, just Michael Keaton all done up as Beetlejuice, his character, his design, looks great. And he still looks great. And that has to do with the fact that his character design and the makeup, and that you didn't know that was Michael Keaton. Like, I mean, he was so done up in makeup that, the fact that it's been such a long time since the original, you're not going to notice at all. Like, character for Beetlejuice, who's already supposed to be dead, it's not going to be like, oh, look at how old he is now, this is unbelievable, because his character was so well done the first time that, it doesn't look like he looks any older, even though he is older. So that's one of those things in the trailer that you see that I really enjoy. Kage, how about you?
So first, there's a lot to unpack here.
With the trailer?
With the trailer, yes, absolutely. So first and foremost, it was just like we talked about in a previous episode, Ghostbusters Afterlife. The reason why that was such a great movie, in my opinion, was because they brought back all the old cast. I mean, all the old cast, side characters included, as much as they could. Same thing with Beetlejuice. They brought back the old cast. There's some people that aren't in. There was some legal trouble with the actor who played her father, Lydia's father. He's not enacting anymore, so it makes sense that he's killed off in this. But it's cool that we're bringing back the old cast. And it's funny because Winona Ryder, I don't know about you guys, like, she looks almost the same. She aged very well, And then Michael Keaton, he is older, but with all that makeup, you don't really notice. You put him in the black and white suit and give him the green hair and the white skin, he's Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
And if you've been following, so unfortunately, Beetlejuice has been kind of stuck in development hell, for lack of better words, for decades now. They have been wanting this for so long, and for one reason or another, it just fell through. But for years, I've watched interviews where he said, if Tim Burton has a script, I'm ready. And he specifically said if Tim Burton would do it. And so I'm very happy, my inner child is happy that they're coming together to do this. But as far as the trailer, it was just a teaser, didn't really tell us much. It shows the old house. I don't know if it's I don't think
I
it's
think they
the-
rebuilt that house.
Really?
Yeah, I think.
That's
I think
impressive.
they, with their production budget, I think they went in and rebuilt that house, because I think if you go back into some of the notes from the original film, I think that house was, they bought it and modified it for the movie, but I think, that was so long ago that house doesn't exist anymore, but they rebuilt it for the new movie.
Yeah, and like the if you watch the old movie, the grassy plain wherever it was, it looks like the same location. The house
bridge
looks the
is the
same.
same.
They showed the bridge with a fresh
Yeah.
coat of red paint where the original cast died.
Yeah, well, yeah,
The couple
Gina
died,
Davis and
yeah.
Alec Baldwin's character, yeah.
Right. So they had that, and I'm like, ooh,
And I
like
think Jenny Ortega was riding her bike to school. I think they had a little scene with her riding the bike, which was what was in the original Beetlejuice with Winona Ryder's character, because she got sent to like an all-girls school.
yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. So that was really cool. I think my only criticism of that trailer, as short as it was he came out and said the juice is loose. No, he should have came out and said it's showtime. And then it should have cut the black and showed the date. No, I'm serious. I felt like that would have been
Better.
much better. But that's just me being a Beetlejuice fanboy. But other than that, I'm really excited for that one to come out. I think it's going to be a
Alright.
good time.
All right, yeah, some good times indeed. And Neff, you've seen the trailer. What did you think?
I thought it was great because, and this is kind of a strange comparison, but like Alien Romulus trailer, which we've talked about before, guys, right? And then talked about on the weekly as well. It doesn't give away too much,
Right.
okay? It relies on you already knowing the product, and then through that acknowledgement, it shows you what it needs to show you, doesn't tell you too much. You see what you need to see, and then based off that, your imagination starts to go wild, and they give you what they need to give you. So like the Alien Romulus trailer, like I said, similarities where you don't get a lot in the trailer, but just with the imagery and the things they're showing, you kind of already understand what direction they're going in. So I thought the trailer was pretty good just based off that, and I think me and you watched it together, Buttons, and I was like, this trailer looks goofy. I might actually have to go watch this
Yeah.
just because of how Michael Keaton delivers the line. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh gosh, this is so
That's
Beetlejuice.
his role, man.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So it's just
And-
like, this is like, okay, I might have to watch this one. But yeah, that's how I felt about the trailer. I thought it was decent because it doesn't tell you much, because it doesn't
Yeah.
have to.
And that's a really good point, because nowadays with these trailers, a lot of the times they give so much of the story
Yeah.
away. Just watching the trailer, you're like, I don't even need to bother to go see the movie. I've pretty much been given the movie in 2 minutes or less, and now I'm not really interested. Or sometimes it'll give it away in
Sure.
such a way that the trailer turns you off to the movie, because you're like, oh, well, if this is the direction they're going, I'm not interested in going to see this. And so for me, I do agree with Neff that the trailer was very simplistic, very like, hey, yes, I know these characters. I'm excited because, again, you hit all those points of your nostalgia, your childhood, and things like that. But it doesn't tell you exactly what the story is going to be. Now, as far as the film expectations for this new movie, let's talk a little bit about, what we are thinking maybe the movie will kind of be about, or what we are expecting, it might do in terms of numbers in the box office. So again, because we don't really know a whole lot about what the story will be, I think it's going to rely pretty heavily on, that nostalgia factor. But again, you've got the right amount of, good qualities going into this. You've got the director, you've got the cast. I feel like, for people who were fans of the original movie, I think you're gonna get that same pull back to the theaters of the people who loved it originally, and maybe even a new audience, this new generation coming in going, oh, here's Jenny Ortega, and here's, let's see, she's been pretty hot in movies recently. Let's see what she's tying. A lot of people really love that Netflix Wednesday. And so, she's been kind of like cast in these similar roles of being this macabre actress.
Scream.
And Winona Ryder is the same way. She had done these very macabre roles as well. So bringing in the cast, I think Jenny Ortega was a great choice to complement the original cast that's returning in here. And, watching a little bit of interviews that Michael Keaton's done as far as promoting and talking about Beetlejuice, is it looks like, he wouldn't have signed on if the story wasn't good. So I've got high hopes, I've got high expectations that, they wouldn't have just done this movie all willy-nilly with a weak script. So I'm hoping that it's gonna be a solid story. But I do think it's gonna obviously rely heavily on Michael Keaton's performance as far as pulling the story forward and making everything work together, which is, the original one, his relationship, was in there, but it was also strong with Lydia and Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin's character, and their interactions with Beetlejuice. And those two actors are not gonna be tied to this film anymore. You won't have Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis. So I'm thinking you're gonna have more of a relationship maybe with Winona Ryder's character and, Catherine O'Hara playing the grandmother, and then, of course, Jenny Ortega, mother-daughter relationship. So, and of course, then we're gonna get the tie-in with Beetlejuice with that. So that's my thoughts. We'll go next to Neff. What do you feel like you're gonna see expectation-wise for Beetlejuice?
Well, I think what you're going to see as well, because this movie is so far removed from the original Beetlejuice, you're going to see a lot of, advances in technology with how they do things. Yeah, it's going to be practical, but I think now with the advances in technology, I think Tim Burton is specifically how he makes movies will have so much more at his disposal.
Yeah.
So I think that's really where this movie is going to take hold, the visual aspect of it.
Right.
I think the story will probably be meh, honestly, but I think the visuals is what's going to grab people and really take people back into almost a retro 90s feel, to where it's like a new age version of Beetlejuice, but also feels like it's the original version of Beetlejuice. So I feel like it will do good in that aspect. And I think this movie will do pretty well. Like I said, we don't have any numbers on the budget, so I can't speculate what the movie will do. But I believe based upon the following of Tim Burton's work, Michael Keaton's work, the Beetlejuice story, I think this movie will do pretty well. Will it do 3-4x? Depends on the budget. I think the budget will probably be $50 to $80 million. If this budget's anything over $100 million, that's going to be kind of strange, but I could see how it could get that way if they lean heavily on the visual, artistic, aspect of the film. But I think this film will be decent. I think it will be funny, and I think people will really like it, and I think it will have that Ghostbusters effect where people actually flock to go watch it just because it's a nostalgia rush, and a nostalgia rush with a new age spin on it.
Yeah. So
casting is great too. Jenna
Absolutely.
Ortega, she's kind of like the X factor in these movies and these type of series. It's funny. She's following this trajectory of in the Addams Family's been around for a long time, longer than the 90s, but we kind of grew up with that Addams Family depiction that we saw on TV. And so it's just kind of or it might have been the Addams Family movie as well. But it's like she's kind of attacking those eras, and so but she's popular at the same time, so I think her fan base will go watch Beetlejuice even if they're not familiar.
Horror is kind of her thing.
Right. Even if they're not familiar with the original Beetlejuice, I feel like new fans of hers will actually go watch Beetlejuice and then go back and watch in it, and then go watch the original. So it's almost like this snowball effect of attention. So I think this movie's actually going to do surprisingly well.
I will go ahead and just touch base off of that too, because we're talking about when it's coming out. This movie is slated for September, which again, as Neff has brought up before, which is with these horror movies, are they being placed in the appropriate release time? And I feel like September, is a pretty good time for it to, it's right close to Halloween without being October, obviously, but
right at the season change.
But it's right, it's right when you're starting to go to those fall movies where you're starting to get in the mood for Halloween. So, Kage, let's go ahead and hear your thoughts on the trailer.
First and foremost, I just want to say something that no one has brought up. We're talking about these nostalgia movies. Ghostbusters, established in the 80s, is coming back. But one thing no one's mentioned is that we've had multiple Ghostbusters projects. We've had multiple movies. we had the 2016 Ghostbusters movie, but it still kept Ghostbusters in the minds of people. Bare minimum, as bad as it was. We haven't had anything related to Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
You got to think about it. There was one movie
And then
in the
animated,
80s, and we had the animated series, and that was back then, and we haven't had anything since.
Yeah,
so the
not
fact
since
that,
the 90s.
right?
no.
So we have a teaser trailer that people are so excited for. That speaks to the staying power of the franchise, or what franchise? There's been one movie.
Yeah. It's not
You know
really-
what I mean?
Now it's establishing a franchise.
Well, hopefully we'll see how
Yeah.
this one does. But it's just like that one movie and cartoon was so good that a little teaser trailer comes out and now people are excited. I've been reading the comments on YouTube on the trailer. It's been all positive. No one is complaining about the cast. No one is complaining about anything in that trailer. Tim Burton, man. Tim Burton he doesn't make bad movies, in my opinion. I have watched from Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, Batman, Nightmare Before Christmas. All these movies have kind of reached cult following status. You know what I mean? And so the fact that we have Tim Burton behind this alone is enough to get me interested. But the fact that you got the original cast coming back also with a little mix of new with Jenna Ortega, I'm sold. I might even be so bold as to say I don't need to see another trailer. You sold me. You got
Yeah.
me. You got the
Yeah.
cast. You got everything I want. I have no idea. I can't even speculate what this plot is going to be about. You know, okay, Lydia was a macabre character. The fact that she was able to settle down and find someone and have a family, have a child at least, is like that's a little mind-boggling. Knowing how weird her character is, but at the same time, it's like it's okay because she's gonna have a weird macabre daughter, and it
It's like,
fits.
hey, Morticia Adams found a
And
family,
that's
you know?
exactly what. Yes, thank you, Buttons. That's exactly what I was gonna say. It's like I can't think of a better actress to play Lydia's daughter. I think Jenna Ortega understands that mindset well, the macabre, just from being Wednesday. I think she's gonna do great.
All right,
Yeah.
and then of course the next thing that we need to talk about, because we've mentioned this before, which is movies being presented outside of their time. I mean, this like we mentioned, this is 30 years after the original, 30 years plus after the original came out, and so do we think that it's too far from the original? Are we saying that, hey, this is so far removed from when the first movie came out that these new audience is gonna either everybody is like, they have such high expectations for it from the original people who saw the first movie, to the new audience members, they're gonna be like, I don't know what's happening because I never saw the first Beetlejuice. Like, is that gonna hurt the movie? Neff, what are your thoughts?
So that goes both ways. So I think, in essence, when you're comparing it to other films that have, like Kage said, is one film, so you can't technically call it a franchise, but a lot of the franchise-based films, you would like to see it at least have one more film, I don't know what you want to call it, adaptation of the story in between this one, because when you look at a 25 to 30 year gap, that's a lot of in between. On the other end, I think this may be the perfect time because the cast now fits the story that maybe everybody needed at this point in time. So it goes both ways. Yeah, would I have liked to see another Beetlejuice probably early 2000s to break up, the gap in time? Sure. But now might be the perfect time and the perfect casting to do what Tim Burton actually envisions. So it kind of goes both ways. This might be different. It's kind of hard to gauge this Beetlejuice one.
So you're saying
It depends how, I know Beetlejuice was a big deal, but it wasn't like Lion King big. Where it's like, we need to push for another, you know what I mean? So I think if it would have been like Lion King big, then it might be like, oh, why didn't we get another one? That's kind of a letdown. I think this is in a weird space where it is a long gap when we're comparing it to other films that have had multiple films and they've done well, you could say, up into a certain point. But I think at the other end, like I said, I think now is the perfect time because now you might be able to utilize the casting the way you want to and tell the story how you actually envisioned it.
Right.
Timing's everything sometimes.
Yeah, and to
Funny
your,
enough,
yeah.
everything sometimes. But
Yeah. So Neff, you make a good point, which is, as Kage had mentioned, these movies sometimes get held up in production. So while you might have wanted a sequel, the story for when, 20 years ago, if they were talking about a sequel then, is going to be a very different story than, 30 years after and what they can tell a story with now. Like you said, the cast is much older. You can't make like Lydia's still a teenager or
Right.
here's her early college years or something like that.
let me ask you, we have Willy Wonka, correct? I guess we could say the Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka, that to
Gene
me
Wilder,
is the
yeah.
one, right? And then you had the one
Johnny
in the
Depp.
early 2000s, and then you had Wonka that just ended 2023.
Right, Timothy
Could you guys
Chalamet.
have done without the one with Johnny Depp?
So, to be fair,
What do you guys think?
that's a Tim Burton
Which is
versus
which is
Yeah.
funny enough.
Yeah,
which is
it's
funny
also-
enough. Tim
it's
Burton.
also a
Could you
Tim
have
Burton.
done without it?
So and then see there, you've got to take two things into consideration
Yes,
here when
yes.
you're talking about this. First of all, so you've got Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then you've got Willy Wonka and the Factory, and then you've got Wonka. So one being Gene Wilder's, and again, I agree, that's the one that I'm gonna associate with my childhood. Johnny Depp's version wasn't bad, new generation, because Gene Wilder was that movie was made before I was even
Correct,
born.
it's before
So
our
All
you're
of us.
talking about
Yeah,
a brand
yeah.
new generation being, introduced to Willy Wonka. So I don't think it was a bad move for Tim Burton because his take was entertaining. It's just not the one that was part of my childhood. But so it's a reboot. It's a remake. Whereas Wonka was a prequel. So I feel like if you were gonna say, which one did you not need? Sure, Johnny Depp's version might not have been necessary, but I don't think you would have got Wonka without Johnny Depp's version. I don't think Wonka would have ever.
Interesting angle.
Because again, as we're talking about staying relevant and keeping people's mindset within that, realm of popularity,
Yeah.
without that Johnny Depp version, I don't think with just Gene Wilder's version that you would have got Wonka.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. The Johnny Depp version was actually very well received. Me personally, I really enjoyed it. I think one of the funniest things, it's so simple, was like, my name is Violet, I don't care.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
dang.
Yeah, just
He's like
his
always
take on
happy
that,
and
yeah.
cheery, but it's so funny because you can tell Tim Burton is behind the writing because it was like, it's all happy candy and all this stuff, but at the same time, there's kind of these dark undertones. Like, he's smiling, but he's like, I really don't care. Like,
So with that being
A little
said,
bit of that dark
so
macabre
very
still showing
good,
through.
Very good rebuttals. Now, with that being said, what if it was a different director from Tim Burton doing a Beetlejuice in between?
Oh,
this
so
one
like
and-
if they had introduced a different
because it's all
director
different
to do a
directors
sequel.
for those Wonkas.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's very true.
I ask you that. Would you think it'd be like, okay?
No, absolutely not. I don't. I mean,
It
it would have
has
been
to
it would
be
have been
Tim
the
Burton,
same
yeah.
thing. It would have been the same thing if they had done another one with Michael Keaton. And
Correct.
and if Michael Keaton was attached, maybe it'd be okay. But no Michael Keaton, no Tim Burton. It's not Beetlejuice.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
it's peanut butter and jelly. They're kind of a package deal. I don't
Yeah.
really think I enjoy Tim Burton movies, but I feel like it would put a bad taste in my mouth, and I think a lot of audiences' mouth, if Tim Burton came out and said, I'm going to do a Beetlejuice movie, and I'm going to have Timothy Chalamet to be Beetlejuice, I would be so pissed.
Yeah.
That's coming from somebody who's starting to become a believer of Timothy Chalamet as an actor.
He's not Michael Keaton.
He's not Michael Keaton. I loved him as Paul Atreides in Dune. Wonka was a really good time. I left the theater with a smile on my face. And mind you, I went into that movie not knowing it was a musical. I just went into it because I saw the other Wonka movies. I enjoyed them. It's always a good time. Didn't know anything about it. And when he opens up with the song, I'm like, oh, that's what this is.
What do you think about the time gap?
Yeah.
The time gap is,
Just as far as sequels in general, because
Yeah.
it's kind of
Very-
a sequel in general question.
well, yeah, absolutely.
30-year gap in between a sequel.
It's funny because it goes against my conventional thought process that generally speaking, when you make a movie, a sequel 30 years later, it's crap.
Yeah.
Because you try so hard, writers, directors try so hard to capture the lightning in a bottle thing, and they can't do it. They may hit all the right marks. Let's get the same director, let's get the same actors, and it just kind of falls flat. We've seen it too many times where you want a movie to be good and it's just crap. And like Ghostbusters Afterlife is kind of one of those exceptions, but I think it was successful because they pulled the old actors. And in the case of Beetlejuice, we haven't had a franchise. We can't call it a franchise yet.
Right.
Yet. That's the key word here. The fact that we haven't had a Beetlejuice anything, game, movie, show, we haven't
we're
had
aware of,
anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you
Like-
said, not since the 90s.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I think this is the exception to that idea that
Yep.
sequels coming so many years are crap. This is the exception to that. We just got a teaser trailer. We heard Tim Burton's on it, and the original cast is on it, and Michael Keaton is on it. I'm sold. I don't need another trailer.
Right.
I'm hyped. Let's go. Who's with me? I think this is one of those rare exceptions.
Yeah, and
I think
agree.
I think it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think as far as Beetlejuice in general, goes, I feel like it's set itself up for some success.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely got a very strong foundation to create a great movie. Now, as far as this becoming a franchise, this to me, Beetlejuice, the second one, I feel like they should not elaborate more. I don't want more Beetlejuice. I
Okay.
feel like this, again, and we mentioned this before, which is movies, if they're bringing them back for pure nostalgia, this for me is kind of what Beetlejuice will be.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you know what? What happened 30 years later? Where are these characters? Like, whatever happened to Beetlejuice? We kind of see him at the end of the first one where he's back in the office and he's all like, his head's getting shrunk, he's like, "Ah!" and so, I mean, what would happen if 30 years down the road, her, Winona Ryder, her character Lydia has a daughter and somehow Beetlejuice is resummoned, as part of a continuation of the story. Now, I know looking at some of the other comments online about this movie is people are like, oh, this movie was very much a one-off. They shouldn't be bothering with a sequel, and with some movies and some trailers that I've seen out there with like movies where they remake or they throw a sequel at a time, you kind of sit there and you go, yeah, why are you trying to ruin my childhood? This was a good, solid story to begin with, but again, I feel like they've created this strong foundation that this movie has or would need in order to be a success. And so I think that there's a lot of people out there that are really excited. I feel like, they're going to go into this movie with some really high expectations because you've got such a strong foundation for a good film. So I'll be very disappointed. I'll be very sad if the movie does not perform well.
Yeah,
But I am excited to see it, and I think, all of us here, once we get some more numbers, as we get closer to September.
Right.
Neff kind of mentioned he feels like this is going to have a smaller budget. I actually think it's going to be kind of a middle of the road. I think they are going to have like that $80 to $90 million budget, just because, back in the day, $15 million got you quite a bit of practical effects compared to now. I think, it being a larger scale practical effects, it's going to cost a little bit more. And I do think anything that they do use as far as CGI, they're going to make it look nice and clean to be
Right.
cohesive with the story. So that's, I think we've pretty much covered all the points that we were gonna talk about as far as Beetlejuice 2s. But I think, Kage,
what
you
you
had
got?
one more
Yeah.
comment?
Yeah, one thing I want to say is Tim Burton, he's done a lot of like dark macabre things, but I think the thing hands down he is most famous for is Nightmare Before Christmas,
Right.
which was all handmade. And it took them so many years
Stop-
to
yeah,
do it,
stop
stop
animation.
motion.
Yeah.
And in the case of Beetlejuice, I think what's exciting about this, aside from the cast and the story, and having everyone come back, is that they said that there's going to be a lot of practical
Right.
effects, okay? And this is important because I don't think in recent memory we have Tim Burton doing his stop motion thing. I think the closest thing we have to that would be the Leica films, like Kubo and the Two Strings, for example. That stop motion, that style. I don't think we have that in 2024.
Chicken Run they did, that kind of same stop animation.
Wasn't that clay though?
There's claymation.
Okay,
But
okay.
it's still
Well-
a stop animation
my-
style.
But that was still a long time ago. But I'm saying like
No, Dawn of the Nugget just came out.
Mm-hmm.
That was 2023, I think at the end of 2023, Dawn of the
I stand
Nugget.
corrected.
But,
Okay.
but with
Wow.
that one, I don't know if it was done completely in claymation, that stop
Well,
animation
yeah,
style, or if it was like a mix.
I would
of the
imagine
two.
there's gonna be a mix of CG. Like in the original Beetlejuice, there was I think there was very minimal CG. They had the model where Beetlejuice was in the model town.
The sandworm.
The sandworm was probably the most.
That actually, the sandworm might have been partial
I think
stop
yeah,
animation. That
yeah,
might have been partial.
yeah. So
stop
I mean,
animation for
but
that.
I guess that's ultimately what I'm trying to say is I'm interested to see what practical effects they're talking about. I saw an article about you talked about it before, Buttons, where Keaton, he read the script and he was excited about the writing and he was excited by the fact, and he made a point to say that this is going to have a lot of practical effects, and he
Like
wouldn't-
the original,
right?
yeah.
And he wouldn't be attached to the project if that wasn't the case. So it'll be interested to see if it scratches that late '80s, early '90s nostalgia itch. Time will tell, but I'm definitely excited for this one.
All right, and going on the outside here, we're gonna go ahead and say Beetlejuice, 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 put them back in the box.
Yeah.
So, as always, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know if you guys are gonna go see Beetlejuice when it comes out in September, or if you have any other comments on topics that we discussed in this episode. And I'm Buttons leading you out with
Neff.
And Kage.
be safe.